David Howard's art scene.
Christo, the Umbrella Project, Part 2.
All the elements of that project is about what is the project. You know, the project is a joint project for Japan and the United States. It is a work of art to highlight the similarity, differences, and the way how the people use the space, live the space, how they reacted to that space, how they move to that space. There are many of comparisons, the color also, many things, also many other elements, but basically the space is the principal element of three-dimensional work of art. 124 million Japanese live on only 8% of the land of Japan, who is the size of California. What's meaning that the 92% of land of Japan is not usable. It's the volcanic mountain with the forest, and of course every square meters of this 8% is used for some purposes. Where contrary in California, when you have this immense outdoor life and very nice long summer, you have the huge use of the space very horizontally. And I try to find something who can translate the space, very much like is my invasion to the space. You know, I arrived to the area here, and of course why I choose that area is part of the umbrella decision. I arrive here, and of course I try to put my presence visible. And I find that what man doing in the space is basically building new settlements, or new houses, or new villages. This is what I am doing actually, really, arriving to the space and creating this new additional settlement. And I find that the umbrella look very much like a house without walls. Actually, I'm building houses without walls. This is why my umbrella, they are not normal size umbrella. The height of the two-story house, the average height of the two-story in Japan and California, their roof or the top part of the umbrella inclination is much bigger to be a reminiscence of the roof of the houses in Japan and California. And is also independent structure in a way that the configuration of umbrellas will translate the availability of the space. In Japan, when the space is so precious, the configuration of the umbrella will be much more intimate, close together, because there is so much space. After that is the forests and mountains cannot put anything. There will be much more regulated the space in Japan. You can see that in the maps. That is why we put these two maps to translate the contrast between the Japan space and American space. Where in America, when the space is so immense, the configuration of the umbrella will reflect immensity of the space. They will be very whimsical, capriciously going in all directions because there is so much space available. This is one point why I chose the umbrella. Tell me why I not build houses, for example, instead of the umbrella. Another point is why I love the umbrella is their dynamic quality. In like building a house or tent, the umbrella opened very fast. Our umbrella opened in 45 seconds. And the dynamic quality of the umbrella is very much linked with the temporary character of the project. It's not something we build for years or months. On the contrary, something will be instantly open, bloom in a matter of few hours, and the very French changes of the landscape will be very obvious and very dynamic. And third point is why I chose the umbrella, is the universality of the umbrellas. It was very necessary to find a model who will be very familiar to the entire world. It's very, many friends think that I choose the umbrella because the half of the project is in Japan, and the Japanese people, they're very keen of the umbrellas. Curiously enough, the umbrella was not invented in the Far East, not even in Japan. The umbrella was invented 4,800 years ago in a country called Mesopotamia, who today is Iraq. Was invented like a sun shelter. Was used widely in that area, Mesopotamia and Persia and Egypt, and of course developed tremendous, powerful symbolical quality. It became like a protection shelter that when the most important person, the king or the wiser person, is sitting in the umbrellas. And of course, even that time, the people was thinking that the sky is like a giant umbrella put by the gods to protect us from the evil. Certainly, this is why we designed my project to have that sitting platform. The base became like a nice sitting platform to have that the umbrella, we have that invitation quality that is invite you to go under the umbrella and to sit on the umbrella. We have that very luminous shade of the fabric, color fabric of the umbrella. All that was links to explore that inner space, who is very attractive, very invitational. In the same way is a dimension who we created that exploring to that inner and outer space of the umbrella. And like the house, when you need to go open the door, or you have a wall, you have this tremendous open quality that umbrella can protect people, protect you, and you can move outside of the umbrella. In California, during the 6 months, over 6 months, 7 months, you have a dry season. There's practically no rain, especially in Southern California. The grass is burned by the sun. We have these golden brown hills. In the dry, we have a dry landscape, and the dry landscape we have a golden yellow color. Where in Japan we have a very rainy summer. It's rainy all the summer. At the end of August, all through all the September, we have the typhoon season with much water. I just coming back from the typhoon number 18, and our valley, when you have a water, 2 meter high level of the water, and the river. And the wet landscape, we have the blue umbrellas. Actually, in Japan Valley, we have a Sato River. And the Sato River, we have 90 umbrellas standing in the river. There are no river in California, there are river in Japan. Basically, I was dealing with this 19-mile stretch along Interstate 5 around Tejon Pass, about 2.5, 3 miles wide in California. It's about 12 miles stretch in Sato River. Route 349 in Japan is about 1.5, 2 miles wide in Japan. We go to the tax assessor and we discover that we have 26 landowners in California. It's about 452 landowners in Japan. And basically we start to deal simultaneously through the governmental structure and to the private landowner structure. We need to present the project to the state agency, the federal agency, the State of California agency in Sacramento, California Highway Patrol, California Caltrans, a National Forest, and some federal agency, the State of California, after that to the county, to Los Angeles and Kern County, because over 150 umbrellas in California, basically they're positioned on the county right-of-way of Los Angeles County and Kern County, and also in the Highway Department of State of California. And of course, very important was to start negotiation with the private landowners. And the way the project deal with very complex issue, not only in the simple permit process, but deal with the symbolical value of people addressed to the space, to the land, to the area. And we are up front with a lot of problems. You know, they're not easy issue. And many people think we will never get permission. I will spend 1 week traveling between Japan and California, and have 1 week to see the project here, 1 week to see the project in Japan. And I like to spend every single hour of the day walk and see the project. You know, I walk 170 miles in California to position my umbrellas. They're my children's, 1,760 umbrellas here. And I like to spend time with them. I like to see them, you know, I like to enjoy it, like an artist looking at his work. This is something I always do on all my projects. One thing. Secondly, is with my wife Jean-Claude, we'll be a little bit like a housekeeping for the 3 weeks. We like to, the space became very much like our property, and we welcome hundreds of thousands of people, and we like to see that everything goes smoothly. There are no traffic congestion, no some kind of unnecessary troubles. All that is keeping us busy for these 3 weeks. After that is removal process. And after that there's huge amount of work I owe to the project, you know. I need to, each of my big projects have his own exhibitions. I need to put this exhibition together of original materials, documents, everything, archives of the project for the last 6 years. All that will keep us busy for the next probably 10 to 12 months from October, end of October this year. No, we will not have depression. This project, they initiated by myself. I do not do commission. This is a very important issue. It should be stated. All this project came from my proper inspiration for something, for some reason, very privately. This is another story, how the umbrella came. But that project is like all other projects, they initiated me. I do that first for myself, because I love to see it, for Jean-Claude, for a few friends, and of course, after that came huge amount of people who the project will happen there. Now, when finally the project is realized, the project is revealed to us, to me, I hope you understand, it's like a revelation. There's no way that I know how the project will be in the mind of the people. Today, 6 years after the starting of the project, I can say you many things about the project. But it would be a lie to tell you that in 1985 I know that. And the way that the project is revealed is bigger than my imagination, and the project absorbs all kind of interpretation. I cannot possibly be Japanese, I will never can pretend to be Japanese, to see how the project will be in the mind of the Japanese people. Even that I'm an American citizen, I cannot possibly put my under my skin the California temperament or California mentality to see how the Californian will see the project. The project is like an open dimension absorbing that tremendous interpretations, and every interpretation is legitimate because this is what the project is. Probably one of the most significant parts of today's art is the globalization of art in a way that any other human work is the same level, globalized around the world. The art was very almost like a secretive or very close to few people, and today art became more and more widely involving hundreds of people. The essential part of artist or man involved with art is the creative process. You create something or you invent something, and you have a creativity essential part of that. And of course, one of the most resourceful, the most enjoyable and pleasure things is that I can do my thing. Evolution of art, or the creativity of artists, is the projection of that is freedom of thinking, freedom of form, freedom of relation to reality, a freedom to be yourself. And you see that through the whole history of art, and especially taking many examples of history of modern art, you see how much that freedom was a driving force to development of art. In 1969, on the way to Australia, when I did a project called Rapcost, I stopped for the first time in Japan 22 years ago. And really, for 2 weeks, I was fascinated by Japan, not so much about so-called usually Western people fascinated by architecture, their relation to the landscape. I was fascinated by the tremendous energy, tremendous dynamics of the Japanese people and their almost workaholic quality and doing perception. They are doers. And I love it that, and I was thinking I would love to do project. I love people who work. I cannot do the project on people who is lazy. And I think I would love to use that dynamics to do project. I have another, but I never do project only in Japan because there's no way that I can. I even don't like to understand the Japanese. I only like to use that energy part of the project. And to compare with the milieu, an area I'm more familiar, the Western world I lived for the many years. In 1970, there was a project between Japan and the Western world, and the Western part of the project, or the Western world part of the project, was in Holland, Netherlands. I lived 6 years in Western Europe. I live in Holland. I like very much Holland. I never get permission from the Dutch. It was not umbrella, it was another proposition. Never permission from the Japanese. That is in 1970. And since there, I returned many, many times in Japan. I have an exhibition, I have a lecture university, I have friends, collectors, museum people. And all the time they was remember that story about the project I like to do between Japan and the Western world. And I always have that in my back and back in my head to revive or to start again possibility to do that project. And finally the umbrella idea came in '84. Now, Japan counterpart of that project, I immediately understand would be United States. There would be no other possibility to choose France, England, or Germany, or any other Western country for that part of the project. There was the very great changes from 1969 to 1985 in the world. And you see that we're dealing with the two richest countries in the world, with the most powerful presence and economics in the world, when finally we recognize that who run our lives, not ideology, not talking, especially with the collapse of the Soviet Union. We recognize evidently that. And in a way, the project started before collapsing of Soviet Union, showing that the project was fermenting in the very rich potential human area. I choose United States and not any place of United States. I choose the west coast of United States basically because there was the tremendous tilting relation of the west coast to Pacific Rim, unlike the east coast when it's tilted to Europe, where west coast is tilted to Pacific Rim. There are great Asian immigration in the South California, and also there's some kind of love-hate relation between here and the Far East. They also want aesthetical decision to choose Southern California, not Oregon or Northern California. I need to find a landscape who is dramatically different from the wet landscape in Japan. The wet landscape in Japan look quite similar from the northwest around Oregon or state of Washington, when here the southwest dry landscape is very different from the wet landscape in Japan. And there was also finally decision California sites in the west coast is the basically practical reason that in 9 hours and 10 minutes you can fly between Tokyo and Los Angeles and to be on the site and the project. Until the middle of 19th century, the art was made for clients. It's only very few works of art was done for no clients before that. And the modern art, or the so-called 20th century art and some part of 19th century art, is the example of that freedom has to develop when an artist tries to do work for himself. And of course that freedom is matter can be exercised in the studio, can be exercised in the gallery, but that freedom can be exercised and beyond the professional art connoisseur space, that is the open public space. And of course, his idea to project that freedom outside of the familiar control space of art connoisseurship and to engage the value of that space of relation of human existence to become integral part to the work of art. And this is why my project, they all link to places where I decided myself to go. They are not commissions, they are projects who were created in places where I have particular interest, but there are not any other reason except my own particular interest. I love architecture, I love urban planning, I love sculpture or painting. In a way, there are tremendous elements of that project of architecture, urban planning, painting and sculptures all together. And physically how was designed this movement of 1,760 umbrella and 19 miles area in California, 1,340 blue umbrella and 12 miles area in Japan is basically by only walking and using the land like my space, like a sculpting. I was walking with my chief engineer, Vaki Abrahamian, with our umbrella project associate, Simon Chaput. We were walking in the hills. I have a surveying markers, wooden poles with the red flags. And I was walking from the landscape. I walked 170 miles in 3 weeks in 1988 to pinpoint the place of 1,760 yellow umbrellas. I position 3 or 4 somewhere, and I walk half a kilometer or 300 to 400 feet away, position another, return back, change my mind. Basically, I was saying before in the beginning of the interview that basically I will need to introduce the essential differences in space between Japan and California. And finally, when you go to see the project in Japan, I hope you will go there, your project in California, you see how the project is different in space. In Japan, the umbrella, you drive on Route 349 and you're introduced to the project in a very subtle, a very gentle way. The umbrella appear around the route, and you need to go out of the route on a secondary road to go to a small village. They appear 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, very woven in the structure and the landscape between the roads and the houses and the rice field and the little bushes of tree, little factory, and they grow in the landscape to that very restricted landscape, and very intimate, very close contact all the time. You're on a matter of 2, 3, 4 meters from the umbrellas continuously. And only when you cross the first time the river, Sato River, and you see in the bottom of the river the first crossing of the umbrella past bamboo forest, suddenly you're confronted with the explosion of near 140 umbrellas taking, or 130 umbrellas taking entire area of the rice field left and the right around that very busy road. And of course the project progressed very rich and very different way through the valley for the next 12 miles. In California, contrary, you drive on Interstate 5, and of course arriving at the project initially is happened always by the road, that is the roadway of living in California, and you're climbing Interstate 5 to direction of Tejon Pass, and actually you make a very long, very strong sweep of the Interstate 5, who have 8-lane road, and the project will explode in front of you immediately. There will be almost like a bursting in all directions of near 400 umbrellas, and entire occupying all the landscape around you, and very free drawing pattern, and very rich pattern of like branches of the tree, sometime like close together and very freely. This is how the project is introduced in California. I never did umbrella before. I hope the umbrella will work well. We are quite confident, but this is the most complex project and logistic matter. I never did project happen in 2 places in the world, not only me, that never been done before, and all the human civilization. There is no work of art or architecture ever to be designed to be seen in 2 places in the world, because it was inconceivable that man can travel in 9 hours between one place and another place. The logistic of that project is tremendous, moving huge amount of materials, human forces, and synchronizing simultaneously, because it's essentially to experience the project simultaneously, that the people from here can take a plane, travel to Japan or vice versa, experience the project. It's probably nobody knows how we will go ahead, but I hope that everything go ahead. We have a great team of engineers, of specialists, our general manager Ogi Huber here, our general contractor Kato-san in Japan. We have a great number of engineers working on the project, and we have a lot of wisdom we try to put together that to anticipate it, all kind of unpredictable situations. The work deal with that highly control and own space by government, by private people, by the different agencies, and borrow that space for short time even, and to project my will or my vision or my dream, if you put it that way, is the essential part of the work. On the way the work borrow the dynamics of that space who everybody accept every day. And of course the temporariness of the work is planned from the beginning, that that transformation or that introduction to the space will be short-living, will be few weeks, few days, and of course, the urgency to be present there, to see, create some kind of affection and some kind of sympathy, because tomorrow will be gone and will disappear.
David Howard's Art Scene.